This is Hashtag History, episode 162. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
If you listened to last week's episode, we forgot our own names. So we forgot our own names and assumed the others.
Right. Or we were thinking we were going to do that.
Yeah. And it felt natural.
Right.
It worked.
We were ready to just swap places.
I guess so. But for this week, my name is Rachel, at least, and I am back for what is my first episode of the new season. And I am, as you all know, super excited about this one. Too excited about it, really, which is why it is a part 2 episode. This is the second part to an already unbelievably long first part that I started last season. As many of you may recall, one of our final episodes of the previous season was an American Presidents 101 episode in which we did a quick down and dirty on several. Okay, that sounds wrong. I don't want to go down or dirty on a singular one of our presidents.
No,
so
except the one that we
except for Franklin Pierce. To be clear, unless it's our 14th president, I don't want it. Actually, I would like to vindicate myself, because after that episode, I received a message from someone who also was like, wait, I thought I was the only one that thought Franklin Pierce was hot. So I was okay, this is a thing.
You looked on Google and it said the hottest president.
It was one of the top searches. So I am officially now and forevermore vindicated. Then again, look at who the other candidates in that same pool are. There's
not hard to be the hottest president amongst those guys.
It's really not hard. I shared with you all some things that you should know about each one of the presidents, their accomplishments, their downfalls, and how they shaped American history. But I, of course, also included some random juicy details too, because of course you cannot talk about the American presidents without doing that. Being the overzealous American presidents obsessed person I am, we were only able to get through the 25th president, William McKinley, before we looked at the clock and Leah and I had been recording for 6 hours. Just kidding, but probably not that far off. So I'm super eager this week to kick off this topic again, starting with our 26th president, and then we'll get all the way through our 46th president, which is where the American presidential experiment ends. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I said this in the part 1 episode as well, but there is, of course, some bias that comes into play with putting together an episode like this. I'm the one that gets to choose what I think is interesting and noteworthy about each of these 99% white guys. So beyond what I included in this episode, there is still so very much more to learn about each one of them, their policies, and their overall impact. If you find this topic even half as interesting as I do, I encourage you to do some further research to learn more. And if you do decide to do that independent research, just reach out in our DMs on Instagram, because I have 1,000,001 book recommendations for you. So with that, let's try this cocktail.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History,
the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
All right. This week's cocktail is generously sponsored by Danielle Perez.
Yay!
Thank you, Danielle, for boozing us up. I have a feeling we'll need it heading into the presidents of this decade, if you catch my drift.
Okay, excellent point. Should we save this cocktail until the last 10 minutes of this episode?
Maybe we can always pause and pour another if we
There
need
you
to.
go.
Now, Danielle left us a very sweet message saying, quote, "We all need a drink and more podcast love from you two in our ears. Love you guys."
Aw.
So thanks, Danielle. We love you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really sweet.
Yeah. This week, don't get too upset with us, as we're going to do a repeat. You heard that right. For possibly, maybe the first, maybe second time in the 17 seasons, we are actually repeating a drink.
Yeah. I can't remember when we've done it before.
I think maybe the Salem witch trials two-parter.
Oh, okay, maybe. Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I'm not positive, but it makes sense, again, since this is a 2-part episode, but it does feel odd since it's split across seasons with other episodes in between. So it just feels a little weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we're going to retry the President or El Presidente cocktail that we sampled in part 1 of this series, which could be fun to compare and contrast how our taste buds have changed over the last couple of months since we last recorded. Our taste buds, our viewpoints on life, you know. Who knows?
Our desire for stronger, harder liquor in the last couple months.
Yeah.
I actually am really excited. Have you looked at what our rating was last time?
I don't remember.
Okay,
no.
I do have it. I have not looked at it because I don't want to spoil what our rating is now, but I will have it handy right after we give our rating this week. I'm eager to see for 2 reasons. One being precisely what you said, like have our taste buds and or just our need for coping assistance over the last few months changed. And also one of the ingredients in here, which I'll let you share more, is rum.
Oh yeah.
And the last time that we had this drink, I used pineapple rum. Now I just have rum. So I'm expecting my rating to go down.
Yeah, I think your rating will go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the President contains, as she mentioned, rum, not pineapple rum, unless that's all you have, in which case, whatever floats your boat. It also contains orange juice and then a small amount of lemon juice and grenadine in equal parts. I'd measured with my heart this time, and I think I put a little more orange juice than the recipe calls for, and I think I might have put a little less lemon juice.
Okay.
So I don't know.
This one could really go either way.
It really could.
All right. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Oh, that's some strong shit. You missing that pineapple rum?
Is this for sure what we had last time?
I think so.
This is very strong.
I mean, again, pineapple rum probably just tastes straight up like pineapple. So
right. Yeah. The pineapple rum brings it down. I have like kind of a nuanced review, which is no, it is not as good as I am confident it was last time with the pineapple rum.
Right. Understandable.
However, as you have already alluded to,
you need it.
This week's topic, we actually need it. Between what has happened since we last talked about the presidents and now. And for context for everyone listening to this, we recorded that last episode in like the fall of 2025, and it is now January of 2026. Hi, hello. We run Venezuela now. So that was not funny, but that's where we're at in the timeline of American history. And so I actually do I appreciate that this is kind of a strong drink right now? I do.
You know what? I like a little bit of pain in my esophagus.
Kind of sane, actually. Like, do we need the pain?
Are we sadomasochists?
Is this like pressing a bruise? Kind of enjoying it? Because that's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
So with all of that in mind,
rating
7.5. I think 7.5.
I'm going to say 7.5. Yeah.
Okay. And with that, let's check out what our rating was last time.
Yeah, it was much higher, I'm sure.
Our rating last time, mine was a 9 and yours was an 8.5.
Yeah.
We've gone down.
I think that I have the cheapest orange juice ever, squeezed.
It wasn't actually even an orange.
Yeah, it's like 90% water, and
it was an onion, an orange onion that was squeezed.
So that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, ratings have gone down for both our cocktail and for the current U.S. president.
Right.
So
as has our hope for the future. So
and our morale and all of the above.
And our mental health.
And joy and hope and peace and all of the wonderful things in the world. So yeah, I appreciate this drink. I am not gonna lie, I kind of wish we just had like whiskey on the rocks.
I mean, we could have. That's very presidential of us.
It actually is. Okay, so with that low rating, let's jump into this episode.
Okay, great.
So we ended last season's episode on an interesting note with the assassination of 25th President William McKinley. This meant that the presidency had to be assumed by his vice president, none other than Theodore Roosevelt, also known as Teddy Roosevelt.
My boy Teddy.
Yeah. I actually kind of had feeling you have like an affinity for him, probably because of national parks and all that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that and just the fact that he was like, I feel like he's like an anomaly where like he looks like a nerd and then he like goes out and rides on horseback and like is really rugged and stuff. Yeah.
He was an anomaly for that role.
Yeah.
Now, kind of almost right in line with what you just said, this is one of those figures that makes this episode really tough because summarizing Teddy Roosevelt in just a couple of quick bullet points, I just want you all to know that I'm really struggling to limit things here. Okay.
Yeah, I feel that.
Theodore Roosevelt was a 2-term president serving from 1901 to 1909. He was the youngest person to ever become president at 42 years old. JFK, whom we're going to talk about later, he often mistakenly takes that title because he was the youngest person elected president at 43 years old. But since Roosevelt had to like assume the presidency when the president died, he actually technically holds the title as the youngest president in history. I think we often think of ruggedness and outdoorsmanship and, quote unquote manliness when we think of Roosevelt. And that would be on par. He was an extremely athletic person known for his love of hiking, skinny dipping, and even boxing in the White House. The latter of which actually led to him losing sight in one of his eyes.
Oh, see, I'm learning new things already.
You may this next part might be a bit new to you too, because he was known for his love of wildlife, acquiring a collection of unusual pets such as a lion, zebra, snake, badger, hyena, even a one-legged rooster, many of which joined him at the White House.
Interesting. Yep, didn't know that.
So much an animal lover, Roosevelt once, while out bear hunting, refused to shoot a defenseless cornered black bear, believing a kill like that to be unsportsmanlike. This story was made into a Washington Post cartoon, which inspired a Brooklyn shopkeeper to create a stuffed animal named Teddy's Bear. And that's where we get the term teddy bear today.
Yep.
Roosevelt was struck by tragedy throughout his life, imagine this, losing both his mother and his wife on the same day for completely different reasons and completely different causes.
Oh.
Like, how do you even survive after that? No. Enough about his personal life, though, because what did he do as president? And I got to rattle them off real quick because we got a long way to go. The top 3 things, he created roughly 230 million acres worth of national forests, parks, bird reservations, and monuments. He began the construction of the Panama Canal, and he was the first U.S. president to win a Nobel Peace Prize for mediating the end of the Russo-Japanese War. And oh my God, we have to move on because I could talk about him forever.
Yeah.
And I almost have. Let's go. William Howard Taft became the 27th president and served 1 term from 1909 to 1913. He had an extremely impressive political career. He's the only U.S. president to have served as Solicitor General. He served as Secretary of War under Teddy Roosevelt. And then this I find so fascinating. He's the only person to hold both the presidency, and then later he became a Supreme Court justice.
Wow.
I know. That's really cool and really impressive.
Yeah.
It was during his presidency that the White House underwent its West Wing expansion project, leading to the creation of the Oval Office, which means that Taft was the first president to work out of the Oval Office. This and many other interesting facts about Taft are often reduced down to the singular thing that I think most people remember about him, his weight.
Oh.
Standing at 5 foot 11 inches and weighing over 350 pounds, Taft was the U.S.'s largest president. Okay. I see you looking at a picture.
I'm literally going to pull up a picture now.
I can see the glow on your face of a new window popping up.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a glow in my eyes.
Well, right. Ooh. After you look at a picture of that, I actually do want you to look up one other thing.
Okay. I'm looking at a picture and I have no comments.
Yeah,
it's fine.
There's this story that he once got stuck in a tub at the White House, which led to the creation of a custom-made giant bathtub to be installed in the people's house.
Okay.
This story about him getting stuck in the tub is likely just a myth, but it spread like wildfire. And honestly, maybe kind of rightfully so, because if you Google a picture of this custom bathtub, you will see how absolutely massive it is.
Wonderful. What should I look for?
I would just say Taft's bathtub. There's this pretty infamous picture of 4 grown men sitting very comfortably in the tub. Do you see it?
I see that picture specifically. And
that is actually shocking.
Can I have this bathtub? Because I don't know about you, but my bathtub where I take baths in, I can barely put my, if I'm sitting up at a 90-degree angle, girl,
and your belly button is outside of the water.
My belly button is outside of the water. My belly button, my boobs, everything is outside of the water. And my legs are maybe able to fully be straight.
Mine is the same. Or like, and then when you're like, my shoulders are freezing. So then you shift downward and then the legs go up on the wall.
I'm glad it's not just me.
No, I would indeed also love a bathtub that I can literally swim in.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually an incredible bathtub, right? But when you're thinking back to Taft, and although he had this really impressive career, this is the thing that he's reduced to, because it's just like such a wild, fascinating, random fact.
Right. And maybe didn't have all that interesting of a political, like, things happening at the time. Like, was his presidency not that interesting?
It's so interesting you say that, because I was just about to address that.
Oh, okay.
I see what you're saying, that like we got to come up with other stories because there's nothing else interesting going on at the time. Actually, there was.
Oh.
So he was not a particularly popular president. He was a Republican like Roosevelt before him, but much of the Republican Party felt that he was far more conservative than Roosevelt and was moving the party in a direction opposite to the one that Roosevelt had set them on and that they were really jiving with.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of this, Roosevelt actually attempted to campaign for the presidency again. This is before term limits, because you'll recall that Teddy Roosevelt had already served 2 terms.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up splitting into a third party of more progressive Republicans known as the Bull Moose Party.
Well, that's a unfortunate name.
No. Is there anything more Teddy Roosevelt than that?
No.
Literally no. He clearly picked the name himself.
Yeah.
And took no feedback from anyone else. Despite Roosevelt being a popular candidate, this massive split in the Republican Party led to a landslide win for the Democratic candidate in the election of 1912.
How do we split the Republican Party now?
I think it's
happening. Maybe.
I think.
Hopefully.
I think.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
I know. Like, let's look back at history to figure out how the fuck we fix right now.
Honestly, we could.
Yeah, no, we could, because we're just repeating history.
Yep. Everything that's happening right now is just a repeat of what happened 100 years ago or
Mhm.
1,000 years ago or something. Like,
Precisely.
Yep.
Now, that was none other than the 28th president, Woodrow Wilson, who served for 2 terms from 1913 to 1921. Wilson was technically a progressive president campaigning for labor laws and expanded workers' rights. It's kind of funny. Our last episode that we just did was about the Newsies and like unions and workers' rights and stuff. This is roughly that time period
just right
that you were
after
talking
that
about.
time period.
Mhm.
Yep.
But as the first president to come from the South since the Civil War, he brought along with him a lot of that racist ideology.
Mhm.
He was the first president to segregate the federal workforce. He also shockingly played The Birth of a Nation, known KKK propaganda at the White House, the first film ever shown at the White House. I mean, if you want to truly understand the history of America, there it is, summed up in one sentence.
And if you want to try to deny the racist history, like, I don't know. There's so many like little snippets of facts like this. Like, how can you?
100%. And to me, this is like not woke theory.
No.
Like, this is just the truth.
Yeah.
Like, the president of the United States played The Birth of a Nation, which was a known KKK propaganda tool at the White House. And it was the first film ever shown at the White House.
Yep.
Okay. This racism extended beyond Black Americans, certainly. I actually talked a lot about Woodrow Wilson in my book about the 1916 shark attacks, since he was president at the time of those incidents.
Go purchase on Amazon if you haven't
Thank
already.
you. Yes, purchase from Amazon, Pen and Sword Books, or your local independent retailer.
Yes.
Yeah, so I share in that book about the awful anti-German sentiment that was rampant in America pre-World War I, and how President Wilson did nothing to stop it. In fact, he egged it on with some really horrifically racist speeches. In one speech, he talked about people that hyphenate their last names in order to hold on to their heritage as well as embrace their American identities. He said, quote, I can see you're nervous to hear this quote.
I am. I'm ready to react. I'm prepared.
You're preparing the reaction. Quote, any man who carries a hyphen about him carries a dagger that he is ready to plunge into the vitals of this republic whenever he gets ready. If I can catch any man with a hyphen in this great contest, I will know that I have caught an enemy of the republic. Unquote.
Oh my daughter is a monster.
I've been thinking this. I really have been meaning to tell you that her last name has been bothering me.
Nico, monster.
Yeah, they're all monsters.
Everyone.
His parents for giving him that last name, monsters.
Anyone who wants to honors both their mother and their father, how fucking dare they?
I'm like, is there not anything more American than that you chose to
acknowledge,
adopt an American name, an English American name?
Yeah.
Okay. Literally, you were an enemy to the Republic because you hyphenated your name. Huh? Okay. He was president during a lot of major changes in the country. He was president when the 18th Amendment, prohibition, was passed. He was president when the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote, was passed.
Oh.
I know, not by his efforts, not really his efforts.
Okay.
Despite his efforts to keep the United States out of the First World War, and despite this literally being the promise he campaigned on, he was president when the U.S. officially declared war on Germany.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, he was hardly actually president during much of his second term. In 1919, toward the latter half of his presidency, he suffered a massive stroke that left him paralyzed on the left side, caused his face to drop, his cognitive functions to be impaired. And so for the last year plus of his presidency, why do you have this face? But did you have something to say about a president having a paralyzed side of their face and drooping?
Not a paralyzed side of their face, but maybe someone else speaking, handing them, maybe notes and sliding them over to them that they then read out loud verbatim. And
and there's like bruising on the hands. Oh no, wait. We're still talking about Wilson.
Right.
Hopefully this is not the case what I'm about to say. For the last year plus of Wilson's presidency, his wife Edith was essentially the president. In a major cover-up operation, Edith hid her husband's condition from not only the public, but even members of his political staff and the cabinet, while she essentially ran things behind the scenes. She was our first woman president.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Let's give Edith a round of applause.
Yeah. Edith,
number one, you're married to what sounds like a horrible person. So round of applause for you. And then secondly, way to take one for the team and do all the work, but take zero of the credit. Kudos, Edith. Depending on, obviously what policies and whatnot you were pushing through. But finally, I know there's more to come here. Other presidents whose wives maybe had a lot of influence over them. But I think it is unusual and very interesting to have a woman behind the president, honestly, who's really running the country. But again, as I mentioned, and as you'll probably mention, there are several following this who have several wives who are essentially influencing them.
I think we definitely know that first ladies have had a lot of influence on presidents. We're going all the way back to the second president of the United States with John Adams and Abigail Adams. He really revered her opinion. Just other than the part where she said, "Hey, remember the ladies and give us the right to vote," and he was like, "Oh, you stupid, foolish woman." Other than that part, he did really revere her opinion, and much of what he did as president was via her influence. And that does continue throughout presidential history. But this is definitely the very first time that we know directly
was signing things on, forging his signature.
Literally, I think he was still signing things, but it was, let me receive it from this member of cabinet. Let me read the whole thing. Let me synthesize that for my husband. Let me tell him where the line is to sign his signature. Let me return it after I have weighed the pros and cons for him, because I've done the research. I've spoken with the cabinet members. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I don't think we can ask that much of. Never mind.
Precisely. See, there are many current parallels. Can we not make a parallel right here? Okay.
I don't want that parallel.
No, thank you. Modern historians have suggested that his cognitive inabilities played a large role in why he was not able to get the U.S. to join the League of Nations, which is just something interesting to think of with hindsight and perspective.
Yeah.
29th President Warren G. Harding was president from 1921 to 1923. You've heard Leah and I talk often about how horrific our sound quality was in the early days of the podcast. Well,
I think we might have mentioned it at the beginning of this one, or
we not bring it up in every episode?
I think we probably do.
We probably do. One such early day was when we had a lovely guest on the show to tell us all about Warren G. Harding and the Teapot Dome scandal. And we decided to record it at her ice cream shop.
Listen, we were novices, so we didn't know. And we also had condenser microphones.
We didn't know. But the thing is, her ice cream shop had marble flooring and a refrigerator behind us that sounded like a rocket ship that was about to take off.
Again, condenser microphones that capture the noise not just of us breathing into the microphone, but that marble,
that rocket ship
flooring, and that rocket ship behind us that was taking off. So
I would say that if you could not hear what we said about Harding in that episode, please let me summarize it here.
Thank you.
Much of Harding's presidency is marked by the Teapot Dome scandal. This was a scandal in which Harding's Interior Secretary, Albert Fall, was secretly leasing Navy oil reserves, one that was called Teapot Dome, to private oil companies in exchange for bribes. Things like... I know. It's painful. It's painful.
This is really painful.
It's really painful. These bribes included, hundreds of thousands of dollars, bonds, livestock, and so on. This all was exposed during Harding's presidency, but before the investigation could be completed, Harding suffered a heart attack and died in office. We know that Fall became the first U.S. cabinet member to go to prison. We don't know how much more Harding may have been implicated had he lived longer. And thus, his presidency was cut short, and what little of it there was marked by scandal. Speaking of scandal, Harding maintained a 15-year-long affair with a mistress whom he wrote thousands of pages worth of love letters to, all of which are now available through the Library of Congress.
I love this.
I don't know if you're ready for this.
I also hate this.
I don't know if you're ready because, my God, they're pretty smutty.
Okay, well, now I'm really ready for it, Rachel.
So, for example, quote, this is from a letter, quote,
okay.
Wouldn't you like to get sopping wet out on Superior, not the lake, for the job of fevered fondling and melting kisses? Wouldn't you like to make the suspected occupant of the next room jealous of the joys he could not know, as we did in morning communion at Richmond? Unquote.
Wow.
I mean, wow. Wouldn't you like to get sopping wet?
I did look at pictures of Harding.
He's okay. Is that we don't share an opinion on that?
It's fine.
Again, the competition is so very low.
I know.
The eyebrows are dark. Looking at him and imagining him asking a woman if she would like to get sopping wet is disturbing.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought there. Young Warren G. Harding, sure. Presidential Warren G. Harding?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I am filing a restraining order. Yikes. But anyway, I mean, I had always I knew about these love letters. I had not realized quite how wet they were until...
I just love that they're in the Library of Congress.
Me too, of course.
I love it.
I love that too.
I hope that all things are just as explicit and open to the public in the future. All communications and...
They will be. The presidency was assumed by Harding's vice president, Calvin Coolidge, who served from 1923 to 1929. He got the call late at night at his home in Vermont that Harding had died. So as opposed to a formal swearing in ceremony, his father, who was a notary public, swore him in at their Vermont home by lamplight, which I think is just like a pretty cool story. Like I was literally sworn into the presidency in my bedroom in the middle of the night by my dad.
No joke. I'm also like picturing white Christmas, like, because that happened in Vermont, and so I'm just imagining it happening on the set of that. I don't know.
And everyone's wearing like long white nightgowns.
Yes.
Me too.
And talking about counting their wishes to fall asleep. Yes.
100%. I love this visual. Coolidge actually did a lot while in office. His image is closely associated with the Roaring Twenties because he was personally responsible for much of the pro-business sentiment at the time. He cut taxes, including to the rich. He reduced federal spending and largely kept his hands out of businesses by reducing regulations and oversight. This worked well for the Roaring Twenties, certainly, but also likely laid the groundwork for the Great Depression to come.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Christmas movies, like, let's get into It's a Wonderful Life next.
There you go. There you go. I told Alex, I said this episode was almost harder because it's just everything has a through line.
Yeah.
Like if it's stuff that's happened within the last 50 years, it's like, oh, that's why we are where we are now.
It feels more connected and somehow, yeah.
No, 100%. When you learn about how big businesses became big businesses and billionaires got richer, like, yeah, that's why we are where we are now. He also signed some pretty major pieces of legislation while he was in office. He signed the Immigration Act of 1924, which restricted immigration by establishing national quotas, significantly favoring European countries and completely barring the majority of Asian countries. It also led to the creation of the U.S. Border Patrol.
Lovely.
See, like everything has a through line. He also signed the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act, which granted birthright citizenship to Native Americans born within their land. This act still did not officially grant them voting rights, however, something that was handled at the state level. Coolidge was known for being a very quiet, stoic person, leading to his nickname Silent Cal. There's apparently this one story of this woman who was at a dinner party with him that told him she bet she could get him to say more than 3 words. His response was, quote, "You lose," unquote.
Stoic, very, very stoic response.
Mm-hmm. This quiet demeanor became even more intense when, only a year into his presidency, his 16-year-old son died. His son had gotten a blood blister on his foot from playing tennis. The blister got infected and he died tragically, the grief of which changed Coolidge forever. I know it's such a horrifically tragic story, the most mundane, monotonous thing to happen.
Who hasn't gotten a blister?
Exactly. Playing tennis. I know. It's so awful. Herbert Hoover became the 31st president, serving one term from 1929 to 1933. He was the very first president born west of the Mississippi, having been born in Iowa and then primarily raised in Oregon. He was a big-time humanitarian, organizing food relief for Europeans during World War I and directing aid to Soviet Russia during the famine. He brought this humanitarian spirit into the White House as well, taking on important issues such as child welfare and Native American rights and prison reform, even being nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize 5 times for his efforts.
Oh.
But let's be honest, none of this really mattered because all anyone remembers about Herbert Hoover is that he was the president during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
The Great Depression was a global economic collapse that devastated Americans. This is the time period in which you see all those black and white photos of people standing in long soup kitchen lines and living in literal dirt. Unemployment reached 25% in the US. 25%, a quarter of working Americans were out of a job. Nearly a third of the banks in the US collapsed, trade fell, price of goods fell, and the stock market crashed. This led to massive homelessness and poverty. As a result, it doesn't really matter who was president during this time period. They were going to be seen as a failure. But Hoover's policies in particular were seen as a huge failure. He was a big believer in small government. He did not provide much federal government assistance to Americans and instead encouraged private charities to contribute aid. Yeah. He was one of those pull yourself up by the bootstraps type people, which is great and all, but not when you literally cannot get a job and have lost all access to money, which is practically worthless at this point anyway. And thus, after one term, Hoover was out.
But we have the Hoover Dam.
So you're right. There is a secondary thing for which we can remember him by.
A very large thing.
It's actually a very large thing. The 32nd president of the United States was Franklin D. Roosevelt, running from 1933 to 1945 and was poised to run another 4 years had he not died in office. He was a cousin of Teddy Roosevelt and went on to become a very popular president. We've talked about him a lot on this podcast. We've talked about him in the context of the hidden presidential illnesses because he developed paralysis from polio as a kid, something that was largely hidden from the public. We talked about his relationship with his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, who was his cousin and was also definitely in love with a woman. We did an episode about that. And we even talked about him during the Newport sex scandal episode, as he was the assistant secretary of the Navy during that whole scandal. Yeah. I also had a chance to talk with historian Emily Glankler in our most recent season finale episode. And we talked all about Roosevelt's New Deal programs and how those shaped the federal government that we know today. He did a lot of things, unsurprisingly, both considering the length of his presidency and considering all the things that occurred during that time period. Most notably, crawling our way out of the Great Depression and then getting involved in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Due to the dire position the United States was in as a result of both of these major events, Franklin Roosevelt created New Deal programs. These were a series of programs and reforms and government agencies to directly assist American citizens. So think things like Social Security, the FDIC, FHA, SEC, and more. All these programs that still exist to this day for now. This was massive and extremely influential.
Mm-hmm.
Roosevelt also did fireside chats, a series of radio addresses where he just spoke directly and frankly with the American public about the New Deal and about the war and home front efforts and the Great Depression and so on and so on. Because of these chats and because of the assistance that his programs had provided to the American people, they really connected with him and he became a beloved president.
Mm-hmm.
This is why he was reelected in 1936, 1940, and 1944.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after his third reelection, however, he suffered a fatal stroke. But don't worry, his longtime mistress was there when he had his stroke, though she left before his wife, Eleanor, arrived.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just wanted to also make a note here that, and granted, it goes a little bit further back than Roosevelt, but like around this time period is when like radio, and then eventually we'll probably start talking about television comes into play. And I think it really is interesting to just see how it affects people feeling a little bit more connected or like devoted or supportive of a certain president.
Absolutely.
It really does like almost personalize a president a little bit
Absolutely.
more that you weren't seeing prior to that, right?
It's funny you say that. In our season finale episode where I got to talk with Emily Glankler, she was saying that she has talked with her grandma about Franklin Roosevelt. And she has said, like, she was a very, very young kid at the time, but she has said she didn't even remember whether her grandma saying this, she didn't remember that if Roosevelt was a Republican or a Democrat. Like she literally didn't even remember or know.
I remember hearing that. Yeah.
Politics didn't matter. They just grew to like love him as a human being because, like you said, these fireside chats personalized him for the American public.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, you see that from probably about then on that
for better or worse,
that people become very dedicated and connected to their the president and or their candidate for president that you didn't see prior to that. Like
Absolutely.
Really it was all about the politics or the policies prior to that, whereas now it's actually about personality or connection or whatever, ego or whatever you want to say.
Absolutely.
There's a shift happening here around this time.
You're so right. And actually in just a couple presidents, we're going to talk about what a major role TV had in literally the election of a president.
Yep. I think I know which president you're talking about.
I'm confident that you do. Due to Roosevelt's sudden passing, his vice president then assumed the role, making Harry S. Truman the 33rd president of the United States, serving nearly 2 terms since Roosevelt had passed so early into his 4th term. This made Truman president from 1945 to 1953. Interestingly, his middle name was literally just the letter S. It's not an initial for a name. It is just S. It was a compromise to honor both of his grandfathers who had S's in their names. And I think that's pretty funny.
Well, I thought we weren't honoring both sides of the family.
As long as they're not German. Or let me think, what is this time period? Yeah, German or Japanese. You are allowed to honor them.
Okay.
I feel Truman is often forgotten, but he did a lot as president. He ended World War II with the extremely controversial atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He signed the Truman Doctrine, which was a pledge that the United States would support nations resisting communism, essentially starting the Cold War. He signed the Marshall Plan in support of the Truman Doctrine, which was a European recovery plan to rebuild Western Europe and prevent the spread of communism. He got the U.S. involved in the Korean War, and he assisted in the creation of the United Nations. It was also during Truman's presidency that the 22nd Amendment passed, the amendment that limits an American president to only 2 4-year terms in office.
I wonder, like, it would be hard not to take that a little personally.
I know. They're like, the last guy was great. You, on the other hand,
no more than
get
two.
out. Yeah, I would definitely take that personally. And to that point, Truman was not a super popular president. And because of this, he was actually expected to lose the 1948 election. The Chicago Daily Tribune actually printed a whole newspaper with the front page headline of Dewey defeats Truman. This was referring to Thomas Dewey, the Republican presidential candidate who was like competing with Truman for the presidency that year.
I was going to say, I don't remember a President Dewey.
No, we have not had a President Dewey, but this all led to like this really infamous photo of Truman who's holding up the headline that says Dewey defeats Truman, and he has like this big cheesy grin on his face.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine like that's how close things were that the newspapers were already printing that the other guy won. Finally, one thing that I personally always remember about Truman is the fact that he spent much of his time as president not living in the White House. It was at this point in history that the White House was essentially falling apart, making it like almost inhabitable without renovations. So he and his family instead stayed in the Blair House, the nearby president's guest house. And it was here that someone tried to assassinate him, but for another time. Dwight D. Eisenhower became the 34th president of the United States, serving 2 terms from 1953 to 1961. His nickname was Ike, running on slogans like "I like Ike," and was a beloved World War II hero who had led the Allied forces to victory during the conflict. He was a pretty popular president, leaving office with one of the highest approval ratings in presidential history at around 65%.
Wow.
He was seen as a peaceful, straightforward president who graciously led the U.S. through the Cold War and ended the Korean War. He also kind of like changed the presidential stance on transparency in regard to the president's health up to this point. As we know, because we did a whole episode about it, it was typical of presidents to hide their illnesses. Eisenhower initially did the same when he had a heart attack in 1955 while in office when he was out golfing. His team initially told the public that he was dealing with digestive upset. But he eventually told the public the truth, and this kind of established a new approach for the next few decades regarding presidential health transparency. And then I would like to close out our discussion of Eisenhower by talking about something very important, which is, of course, that time that he literally tried to ban squirrels from the White House lawn.
Excuse me, what?
I'm like, is that possible? Because I would also like to do that in my backyard. But seriously, he was an avid golfer and had a putting green installed on the lawn during his time as president. Squirrels kept coming in and like digging holes in it and burying acorns. And so he called for a squirrel ban and set up a bunch of traps. This led to public outrage with a whole campaign and a Save the White House Squirrels fund. Eisenhower eventually conceded, and it all became like one big joke, one that he participated in as well.
That's hilarious. I feel very connected to this issue, having
You worked on a campus?
Yeah, I work on a college
say?
Campus where squirrels run rampant, and sometimes, you know, I'm not saying that this has happened to me personally. Attack people while they're eating muffins out on a balcony.
Specifically blueberry muffins.
And I'm not saying that squirrels on the Sac State campus are evil, but I am saying stop feeding them.
It's too late. It's too late. This is so fun. This is like local lore.
Oh, yeah. And you want to know, as someone, again, I've literally witnessed people take their 15-minute afternoon break and they spend those 15 minutes going outside of my window to feed squirrels nuts. So I'd like to say, fuck you, Sharon. No, I'm kidding. There's no Sharon.
Contributing to the problem
specifically.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, when you feed squirrels, they get a little aggressive. And I'm just
100%.
You know,
and it's a college campus. They're accustomed to people. They're not scared of people.
Well, and then honestly, on the flip side, in the summer when there's no students feeding them nuts or blueberry muffins, they become emaciated, and it's really sad. I don't want to see a skin and bone squirrel walking past me, you know, hobbling past me, begging for food. So, you know, I'm just saying, do it for the squirrels, if nothing else. I'm so sorry.
It's the visual of an emaciated squirrel.
Literally,
hobbling
they
past your
literally
office
lose
window.
weight. And they literally get skinny and they get really desperate and sad.
Oh, that's really sad. Okay, so if you would like to enact a squirrel ban, like we have said one million times in this podcast, look to history to learn what to do with the president.
I was going to say, it seems like it's not going to be successful.
No.
Based on Eisenhower's
no
experience.
Hope.
So I don't know. I don't want to ban the squirrels. I just want to ban feeding the squirrels. Okay.
Yeah, can we just ban the people that feed the squirrels? Oh man, that one made my stomach hurt. They become emaciated. They lose weight on the off season.
No, they actually. You think I'm joking, but I'm
no.
not.
What I think is like funny. I didn't go to Sac State, but so many people I know did, obviously, and I am familiar with the lore.
Right.
And I've been on Sac State campus like 5 times in my life. And yet I know the lore because it's one of the first things people say. It's like culture shock. The squirrels there are different. They're different. They're built different. Because they eat blueberry muffins and they're not scared of humans.
Not even in the slightest. Okay.
Some local lore. Yeah. I love it. Oh my God. So good. Okay. Now, the 35th president of the United States was John F. Kennedy, who, as we of course know, did not even complete his entire first term, serving from only 1961 to 1963.
Which is actually kind of crazy to think about because I feel like, again, talking about lore, there's this like,
yes,
I feel like he made such a huge impact on our country and I don't know, just like the visual or like the vision of presidents in our nation anyway. So it's crazy to think he didn't even finish a whole term.
I completely agree with you. We give him so much credit for so much, even if that's kind of to your point, just like visual and imagery of the American presidency when he truthfully didn't serve that long. Yeah. Kennedy, or JFK as he was called, was famously assassinated in a horrifically gruesome and public manner just days before Thanksgiving in November of 1963. But before all of that, JFK was the youngest elected president. We talked about that nuance when we discussed Teddy Roosevelt. And he came from a well-known and well-established political family. He and his wife, Jackie, were the it couple, representing kind of like a break in the unending presidential makeup of old white men. JFK and his wife were kind of like hot and they were young and they had young children. And this was exciting for American voters. This is exactly what you were saying about what a difference radio made in our relationship with presidents. There are stories that for people that listened on the radio to the 1960 presidential debate between JFK and Richard Nixon, they said that they thought Nixon won. For those that watched on television, they largely said that Kennedy had won. Why? Because of Kennedy's looks, because of his youth, his confidence, and his charming demeanor. Yeah. Despite this appearance, Kennedy actually suffered from chronic illnesses like Addison's disease and back pain, which led him to consuming like a lot of drugs throughout his life. It was largely hidden from the public at the time, but he was known amongst his close-knit group as a chronic cheater. Cough, cough, Marilyn Monroe. A few other quick, interesting facts. He's the only president to have a Purple Heart for the injuries that he sustained when his patrol boat was rammed by the Japanese while serving in World War II. This boat ended up sinking. Kennedy was able to carve a message into a coconut that actually led to his eventual rescue.
This is absolutely insane. This isn't real.
I know. And what's even more insane is that he was able to get this coconut back. He had it encased and he kept it on his desk in the Oval Office.
That's not real. I mean, I know it is, but
it sounds like a Tom Hanks movie, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Totally.
There's so much else to say about Kennedy and his leadership, but his term and life were cut short when on November 22nd, 1963, he and his wife were riding in a motorcade through Dallas, Texas. Shots rang out from an office building and perhaps also a grassy knoll? Question mark. And Kennedy was struck right in the head, quite literally blasting his brains across the back of the car in front of hundreds of people that had come out to see the president drive by.
And into his wife's hands as she tried to scoop up his skull.
All down her pink dress. Yeah. He was pronounced dead that same day, and his assassin was captured not long after. That is the absolute shortest summary I have ever given of JFK's assassination. And yes, it was very hard for me. But don't fret, we talked for 2 full episodes all about his assassination. So if you want to hear that, check out episodes 19 and 20.
Yeah, and honestly, that was hard to condense it. Hard for Rachel, I know, to condense it down to 2 episodes. So that's the abridged version.
Yeah, there's so much we don't talk about in even those. Given Kennedy's horrific assassination, his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, was quickly given the oath of office and assumed the role as 36th president of the United States, serving out the remainder of Kennedy's term and then 1 term of his own from 1963 to 1969. Johnson, or LBJ, did a lot as president. What he is probably most known for is being the president to sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination and banned segregation, and signing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He also helped create Head Start, Medicare, and Medicaid. He established the Department of Housing and Urban Development, as well as the Department of Transportation. He passed the Immigration Act of 1965, which officially ended the national origins quotas of immigration acts passed. It was also during his presidency that federal funding for public broadcasting began.
I feel like Johnson is a very, maybe like, I don't want to say controversial character, but because I feel like there's a group of people that say like, oh, he was just finishing JFK's work, right? He was just finishing the plans or the groundwork that JFK laid out. Yeah. But like, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of accomplishments to have. And I feel like maybe he isn't given as much credit as is due to him.
No, I am with you. And what's funny is because I've talked to historians in Texas, they feel similarly to what you're saying, is that he doesn't get that credit. I think he's from Texas. So he's like, he's their boy. And they feel that way. They're like, he was a career politician and like, look at how much he did while president. Yeah. And a lot of that gets neglected for, I think, a handful of reasons. One of them being, you know, he was just kind of cleaning up what Kennedy couldn't finish. There was a lot of controversy and speculation over even Johnson's involvement in Kennedy's assassination, and how quickly he assumed command. But also for another reason we're going to talk about in just a minute was like his personality and his behaviors.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't all good stuff, though. All the things, you know, he did during his presidency. In fact, the reason that LBJ didn't even attempt to run for a second term was because of how unpopular his stance on the Vietnam War was. We know from other episodes that we've done just how controversial the Vietnam War was and how disillusioned many Americans became with our involvement there. LBJ personally made that much worse by increasing our military presence in Vietnam from a couple thousand to over 500,000 by 1968. But if I'm being honest, the number one thing that always comes to mind when I think of LBJ, and the number one thing that I hope listeners take away from these highlights of him, is how truly disgusting he was. I see you nodding. So you remember when we did an episode.
Yeah, I believe there's also a John Oliver. Well, I feel like John Oliver brings it up in every episode of his show. But yes, yeah, I know exactly what you're about to discuss.
Yeah, we guested on another history podcast where we talked all about LBJ's disgusting behavior. And I looked back at it when I was researching for this episode, and I literally couldn't stop laughing. It's so horrible.
It's so bad.
It's
and honestly,
so disgusting.
Like, it's so hard because like the first part of this, I was like, oh, he did so much. I forgot that this is the guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? You blocked
out that he's nasty.
Yeah.
LBJ was known for literally burping and farting on people, or nose picking and crotch scratching in their presence, like without any shame. One congressman, Richard Bolling, who witnessed some of this, was once quoted as saying, quote, "I wouldn't say Johnson was vulgar. He was barnyard," unquote. He was also known for dragging people into the bathroom with him while he was using the toilet, like if he hadn't finished the conversation yet. One person who was invited in for one of these toilet meetings, U.S. National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy.
That's a name.
That is, his first name is literally McGeorge. Yeah. Was so embarrassed by the encounter that he refused to ever make eye contact with the president again, which can imagine I would be in a similar position. Like, I cannot ever look at you again.
Yeah, and I really want to know what was going through LBJ's mind. Like, was that the point? Was it like a power move, or was he truly just like so unaware?
I lean more towards the former.
Yeah.
Because of something else that he did frequently, which we will talk about shortly. UN official Arthur Goldschmidt once described his own similar encounter, saying that LBJ, quote, took a crap, then shaved and showered, all the while continuing his conversation as though what he was doing was the most normal thing in the world, unquote. He's literally
busy,
pooped
Rachel.
in front of him.
Rachel, he's busy.
I can't imagine. He literally pooped while talking to someone about like maybe important official business.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, if I go to the bathroom with like a coworker or something and they keep talking to me, I'm like, I don't, is this,
what is the etiquette here?
I'm like, I don't know what to do. So if one of them started like dropping a deuce while we were talking,
which they wouldn't though.
No.
If you need to do that, if you need to go number 2, that's not when you invite your coworker to come to the bathroom with you. Right. It's only when you need to tinkle.
That's when you go to the downstairs single stall bathroom.
You go to a separate bathroom on a separate floor.
The 4th floor bathroom, obviously, where there's no offices that
there's a lock on the door.
Yeah. Obviously.
Oh my God. No surprise, but LBJ was also not a stranger to exposing himself either. And this is kind of where I think like that power move comes in. One report claims he whipped it out and shouted, quote, "Woo-wee! Have you ever seen anything as big as this?"
Yeah.
Unquote. Yeah. During a particularly tense questioning session with reporters in which they were badgering him about why the United States was in Vietnam, he quite literally unzipped his pants, pulled out Jumbo. Yes, he referred to his penis as Jumbo and said, quote, "This is why," unquote.
I'm not condoning that behavior. Unacceptable. Also, was it Jumbo or was he delusional?
But also, can we get some more information about this, please?
What did they say?
I think it maybe was Jumbo because
oh, that's right.
Either
this is the part that I keep that's always in my mind. Okay.
This is the part. Either to our dismay or our pleasure, LBJ had approximately 800 hours worth of his conversations recorded while in the White House, which is all available online through millercenter.com. So, if you would like to hear him engage in horrifically grotesque and vulgar conversation, such as a phone call that he had with his tailor in which he requested they add extra inches to the crotch of his pants as to best accommodate Jumbo, you can do so at your leisure.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Richard Nixon was elected the 37th president of the United States, serving from 1969 to 1974. He had previously served as vice president for 8 years under Eisenhower, and then we, of course, know that he campaigned for the presidency in 1960, but lost to Kennedy. He did several things while president that I will quickly run through because, let's be honest, the only thing we all remember Nixon for is the fact that he is the only president in American history to resign from the presidency on account of a major scandal. So very quickly, Nixon ended U.S. involvement in Vietnam, a largely popular decision. He ended the draft. He established the Environment Protection Agency, and he was also president when Apollo 11 landed on the moon. But who cares? Because in June of 1972, 5 men who were connected with Nixon's re-election campaign were caught breaking into the opposing DNC offices at Watergate to plant bugs and steal documents. Nixon then attempted to cover up the whole thing by destroying evidence and silencing witnesses. The Washington Post was able to expose all of this, which included tape recordings directly connecting Nixon with the cover-up. In order to avoid what was a near certain impeachment, Nixon instead resigned from the presidency, the first and only president to ever do so. We've covered the Watergate scandal with our friend Alicia of the Civics and Coffee podcast before, but because after doing research for this episode, I realized I really do want to take a deeper dive into it myself. I am planning to cover it in a full-length episode later on this season of the podcast.
Yay! Yeah.
Presidential scandal.
There's going to be no parallels to
Never.
current situation.
Honestly, there are no parallels because journalists are exposing things with the current administration every single day, and apparently it doesn't matter.
Well, exposing things that make Watergate actually not look like that big of a deal.
100%. And yet Watergate was a big deal.
Yeah.
So Nixon's VP, Gerald Ford, then assumed the presidency upon his resignation. He only served from 1974 to 1977. This is the shortest term in presidential history for a president that did not die in office. Ford was also the only president in U.S. history to have not won an election for president or vice president. Before Nixon resigned from the presidency, his original VP, Spiro Agnew, resigned due to another scandal, not even the Watergate scandal, though it did overlap. After Agnew's resignation, Nixon nominated Ford, who was then the House Minority Leader, who was then confirmed by Congress. So he didn't take that typical route to become vice president, which is generally when the VP is running on the ticket alongside the presidential nominee. Because he was in office for such a short period of time, and a tumultuous time at that, much of his presidency was spent trying to bring peace and order back to the country. He didn't do himself any favors in this regard when he actually pardoned Nixon for his past transgressions, an extremely controversial move. Mm-hmm. Ford miraculously survived 2 assassination attempts within just 17 days of one another. The first occurred here in Sacramento, California, while he was walking from the Senator Hotel to the California State Capitol to meet with then Governor Jerry Brown. While shaking hands with the crowd, one of the members of the Charles Manson cult, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, almost shot at him. And then the other attempt was just a few weeks later in nearby San Francisco.
Yay, California.
I know. What a poor representation.
Seriously.
He literally almost got murdered twice in our backyard.
Yeah.
Despite these attempts, Ford actually went on to live a fairly long life, only dying in 2006 at the age of 93, making him one of the oldest living former presidents. Mm-hmm. It probably helps that he was super fit. Before becoming president, he actually had been recruited for multiple NFL teams, specifically the Packers and the Lions, both of which he turned down to instead pursue a career in law and politics.
I did not know that.
I know. Isn't that kind of shocking?
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter became the 39th president, serving one term from 1977 to 1981. Everyone knows Carter as the peanut farmer. This added to his appeal as this down-to-earth, humble guy. He was very low-key. He sent his daughter to public school instead of private school, like many previous presidents had. He walked the whole parade for his inauguration instead of riding in the limousine. That way he could personally wave and greet the crowd that had gathered. And this is a lot of how we characterize him now, right? Is this very down-to-earth, humble person. He did several things in his short time as president, which included brokering peace between Egypt and Israel. No big deal. Secured control of the Panama Canal to Panama, created the Department of Energy, created the Department of Education, and much more. But there's a reason he only served one term, despite campaigning for a second. There was a major inflation and energy crisis going on during his presidency that hurt his impact. But most of all, it was the Iran hostage crisis. This was an incident in which 66 Americans were taken hostage at the embassy of the United States in Tehran, with the majority of them being held hostage for over a year. Carter tried for months to resolve things diplomatically, to no avail. Eventually, he ordered a military operation to rescue the hostages, which ended in total disaster. 3 of the 8 helicopters used in the mission failed, leading them to cancel the whole operation. But during the withdrawal, a helicopter collided with the plane, killing 8 of the service members and injuring another 5. So not only were no hostages rescued, but also American lives were lost. Mm-hmm. Carter held a very somber press conference the next day in which he accepted full responsibility for the failed mission.
Which, I think that's a great thing for a leader to do.
Yes.
But I think also in reality, a president doesn't necessarily have, a say in, the tactics of a military operation.
Yeah. I think it goes to, if you have, and I feel this way, if you have a good boss, whatever you do under their leadership, Exactly. It falls back on them, and they are the ones that have to take responsibility. And that's just the reality of taking on a role in leadership.
Right. If you decide to elevate yourself to that level of leadership, then you need to be responsible for everything that's happening underneath you.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Even if that responsibility is simply that you hired the wrong person for the job.
Yep.
And so, but also, this was just a flawed mission that mistakes happen that obviously no one intended for them to happen.
Yeah.
But it was between, this failure and the fact that the hostages continue to be held after this failed operation. They continue to be held for nearly a year, is ultimately what led to the end of Carter's popularity and subsequently presidency. Mm-hmm. I actually think Carter's more well known for the things he did in his post-presidential life. He and his wife, Rosalind, were major humanitarians and were super involved in programs like Habitats for Humanities, where they built homes for those in need and campaigned against diseases in third world countries. Carter only just passed away in 2024 at the age of 100.
Mm-hmm.
The 40th president of the United States was a little known guy that we rarely talk about nowadays.
Yeah.
His name was Ronald Reagan, and he served 2 terms from 1981 to 1989. I make that joke because so much of his policies have a through line to today's current political, social, and financial predicaments. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Like having an actor or a reality TV star become president of the United States?
Something like that. Although at least Reagan did serve in the military, while others were draft dodgers. Reagan was a relatively well-known actor before he was elected to 2 terms as governor of California. Those acting skills came to use in his political life, but also when he served in World War II, he actually made a bunch of the training videos in the army, which I think is kind of funny. He was very charismatic. He was a great speaker, and America yearned in the early 1980s for a return to conservative politics, both economically and spiritually. Reagan's economic policies became known as Reaganomics. Some of these policies included cutting government spending on social programs like food stamps and Medicaid. He imposed major tax cuts, primarily for the wealthy, and corporations, widening that inequality gap. He created jobs which dropped unemployment, and he reduced federal oversight. Reagan also expanded the military and modernized it with new weapons and strategies, ultimately leading to the end of the Cold War. There's too much to say. There are not enough time, so we'll move on. Reagan was also the first to really form what could be considered a lasting political alliance between evangelical religious voters and the Republican Party. It was during Reagan's campaign and administration that things that we consider to be more religious, conservative, like sticking points, things like abortion and prayer in schools and whatnot, definitively aligned with the GOP as party values. And that has a very impactful ripple effect that persists to this day. Reagan was the first to name a woman to the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor. And Reagan also experienced a narrow assassination attempt. This is such a wild and honestly awful story that I have actually decided to have it as a topic for a future episode this season, because we have to have at least an hour to talk about just this assassination attempt.
I am so excited to hear about this. That sounds bad. That sounds, you know what I mean.
Intrigued. I'm so intrigued.
Yes.
Yeah. The long of the short of it is that in March of 1981, Reagan was leaving a speaking engagement at a hotel and was walking to his limo when he was shot by a man named John Hinckley Jr. Hinckley had fallen in love with Jodie Foster, the actress, after seeing her in The Taxi Driver, the movie where she's a literal 12-year-old and Hinckley was a grown man. Anyway, he thought if he assassinated the president of the United States that this would impress Foster? Question mark?
Yeah.
Reagan was hit in the chest with the bullet, actually breaking one of his ribs and puncturing his lungs. This wasn't immediately obvious, though, as he sat in the back of the limo after the shooting and was being rushed to the White House. He didn't even realize that he'd been shot. He actually just thought he had broken a rib when he was being pushed into the limo by his servicemen. But when he started coughing up blood, his staff made the last-minute decision to have him rushed to the hospital instead of the White House.
Good decision. Thank you.
I know. It's a decision that doctors have said saved his life.
When you said they were taking him to the White House, I was like, what?
I do think that sounds crazy, right? But they didn't know he'd been shot. Like he gets into the car and he's like, ow, my ribs hurt. Like, did you... they were just having conversation like, did you break my ribs when we jumped into this car? And the White House obviously has like medical
doctors,
they have medical staff there. Knowing what we know, it's shocking that they weren't just headed straight to the hospital. But anyway, so this serviceman says like, hey, we got to get this guy to the doctor. They take him there. He was experiencing, we learned, so much internal bleeding that he actually lost half of his blood.
Jesus.
He insisted upon walking himself into the hospital as a show of strength, but once he made it into the emergency room, he collapsed and was rushed into emergency surgery where the doctors found the bullet 1 inch from his heart. Reagan recovered and was released a few weeks later, and Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity and was sent to a mental institution that he was actually released from in 2016. So, yes, he is out and living somewhere in Virginia right now, last I heard.
Wow.
Several of Reagan's staffers were also wounded during the assassination attempt, including White House Press Secretary James Brady, who was hit in the head and as a result suffered from brain damage for the rest of his life. It's actually because of Brady and his wife that we have the Brady Law, also known as the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993, which established federal background checks on firearms and a 5-day waiting period for handgun purchases. But again, we will save all of this for a future episode this season because there's so much more to say.
Including opinions and comments, keeping them to myself. Okay.
Yeah, including commentary. Reagan's vice president, George H.W. Bush, was elected as the 41st president of the United States, serving one term from 1989 to 1993. He was given 2 middle names at birth because his parents couldn't decide between naming him after his maternal grandfather or his paternal grandfather.
He's an enemy of the United States.
He has a dagger to thrust into the Republic. Can't you tell? Oh my God, it's so good. They combined them into Herbert Walker, which is what the HW stands for. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting. Bush had a pretty impressive background. He was a World War II Navy pilot. When he became a pilot in 1943, he was the youngest Navy pilot ever. He was a congressman. He served as the CIA director, a UN ambassador, chairman of the RNC, and then, of course, vice president for both of Reagan's terms. Mm-hmm. As president, he officially oversaw the end of the Cold War, oversaw the Gulf War, and the invasion of Panama to overthrow their ruler, a very popular topic these days in 2026. He also signed some major pieces of legislation, including ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which made it illegal to discriminate against people with disabilities. He made the very controversial nomination of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. See our episode 59 about Anita Hill for more on that. Mm-hmm. But perhaps most controversial, considering that it is what led to his defeat for re-election, was the major economic recession of the early 1990s and his broken promise about taxes. Bush literally said in a famous speech in 1988, quote, "Read my lips, no new taxes," unquote. And then in 1990, in a budget deal, he increased taxes. This and the opposing candidate in 1992 being far more appealing is what ultimately led to Bush only serving one term. Mm-hmm. That far more appealing opposing candidate was none other than Bill Clinton, who would become the 42nd president of the United States, serving 2 terms from 1993 to 2001.
Also, I feel like my perception of time, because now we're alive now, right?
Yeah, we're alive now.
Clinton was president in 2001.
I know. No, I had the same thought when I was putting this together.
What?
Like when not just we're alive, we're like semi-grown.
Yeah, we're like,
we're 10.
Yeah, we have like self, reflection and thought and
yeah.
What?
I know. I could not agree with you more. Mm-hmm. I had the exact same thoughts.
Yeah.
It's like 1993. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds 2001. Right. No.
What?
Fake news. Clinton was a popular candidate across a broad demographic of voters. He was a moderate Democrat with an objective to bring politics back to the center. He had democratic values, but as a boy from Arkansas, also had conservative Southern roots, and this was really appealing. Mm-hmm. He became the youngest governor in the country when he was elected a governor of Arkansas at the age of 32. He served as governor for a total of 12 years, non-consecutively. This is pretty interesting. He served a 2-year term, lost his re-election bid, and then regained the governorship in the next election, earning him the name of the comeback kid. As president, Clinton saw significant economic success. In fact, his time as president is marked by the longest economic expansion in U.S. history. The GDP grew, unemployment fell, there was massive job creation, an increase in home ownership, and so on. People care about their money more than anything else. Our current political situation is evidence of that. And so this made him an extremely popular president. But in 1998, this all threatened to blow up when it was revealed that Clinton had engaged in an extramarital affair with a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky.
Which we haven't talked about at all on this podcast.
No,
ever.
we've barely touched it. Should we do an episode about it, do you think?
Oh, maybe.
It wasn't just that he had an extramarital affair, though. It's that he lied about it on national television and behind closed doors persuaded Lewinsky to lie on a legal affidavit about their relationship. The Clinton-Lewinsky affair was the catalyst in a long string of investigations against Bill Clinton, including an investigation into very serious sexual harassment claims brought forth by a woman named Paula Jones. Clinton was impeached for giving false testimony and for convincing Lewinsky to perjure herself, becoming only the second president in American history to be impeached. After a 5-week trial in the Senate, Clinton was acquitted on both counts as the necessary 2/3 majority vote could not be met, and he continued to serve the remainder of his presidential term, leaving office in 2001 with an extraordinarily high approval rating of 66%.
Because remember, people, impeachment
does not mean removal from office. Our timing's always so bad. But yes. And we talk about all that and so much more in our episode 152 about the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal.
Yep.
The 43rd president of the United States was George W. Bush, serving 2 terms from 2001 to 2009. He makes up only the second father-son presidential duo, as it was his dad that was the 41st president of the United States. His election to the presidency was not a smooth one. In fact, it resulted in a major Supreme Court case titled Bush v. Gore.
Mm-hmm.
The Democratic opponent in the 2000 election was Clinton's vice president, Al Gore. And Bush and Gore were neck and neck for much of the campaign. Just 5 days before Election Day, it was revealed that Bush had not been transparent about a DUI he had received in the past, a decision that cost him millions of votes from people, primarily evangelical voters, who felt betrayed by his not disclosing such a thing. This caused Bush to lose the 4-point lead he had ahead of Election Day.
Wait, so people didn't just support a candidate regardless of their past?
It's actually really remarkable doing this research is seeing people rescinding their support of political candidates when things are exposed.
So you mean that they weren't dedicated to like a person, but more ideals?
Yeah, you're saying they were not in a cult and were rather just engaged, competent voters
who
that cared about the future of the country.
Yeah, think. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just sorry.
And like it cost him like 3 million votes. Like those people just didn't come out to vote.
Yeah.
Because it mattered to them that he lied.
Mm-hmm.
This so on election night, so things are like really neck and neck, and then like right before Election Day, it's like things are kind of looking squirrely.
I remember this time period was the first time I was ever aware of politics.
Yeah.
Like it was ever even in my purview. Like I was still in elementary school, right? And I do feel like I remember it being like, oh, Gore's gonna win. Like,
yeah, I actually have memories of this too.
Yeah.
I remember I was sleeping over at my grandma's house, and we were she loved to paint, and so we were like painting together and eating and watching like the election results.
Yeah. I love that for you.
I know. It actually, I mean,
I feel like that's probably a very core memory for you.
It is. And I'm like, is it any surprise why I turned out the way I did? Like I was watching election night results with my grandma while we were like over a beautiful dinner and painting and discussing politics at 10 years old or whatever. And now I am exactly as I am.
Yeah.
So on election night, Florida was called for Gore before the Florida polls had officially closed. After they closed and votes were continuing to be counted, CNN and CBS actually rescinded their early call for Florida, saying instead that things were looking good for Bush. This led Gore to call Bush to officially concede the race to him. But then things in Florida shifted again, narrowing the margin that much further. Gore and Bush spoke on the phone again, and Gore rescinded his concession. It's like so insane, right? Yeah. Both the Bush and Gore teams sent officials to Florida to oversee a manual recount of the vote. It was found that each county had different standards for how they determined what counted as a valid vote. You know, like, did they circle inside the circle or like next to the circle? Bush's team argued that it wasn't fair to treat voters differently based on county, and the Supreme Court agreed in a 5-4 decision that this did violate the Equal Protections Clause of the U.S. Constitution, and ordered that the recount stop and the results of the election be read as is. So with just 537 votes, Bush won the state of Florida and subsequently won the presidency. It's like so insane.
It's, I mean, 537 out of how many people in, not just in Florida, but in the United States. You know what I mean? Like the percentage that he won by is
unreal.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Just 8 months into his first term as president, 9/11 happened. This and his response to it would characterize his entire presidency.
Mm-hmm.
On September 11th, 2001, the terrorist group Al-Qaeda executed suicide missions in which they flew commercial airlines with innocent people on board into each of the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon. A fourth plane, likely headed for the U.S. Capitol or the White House, was taken over by passengers who caused the plane to instead crash in a field in Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people died as a result of these attacks, much of which was televised in real time. This is one of those events in American history that if you were alive for it, you remember exactly where you were and what you were doing when the second tower was struck. In response to this, Bush initiated a war on terror, resulting in roughly 20 years of American combat and involvement in Afghanistan and Iraq. This marked the longest war in U.S. history, with the final U.S. soldier only pulled from Afghanistan in August of 2021. Mm-hmm. Also, in response to the 9/11 attacks, Bush created the Department of Homeland Security. Also, he signed the controversial Patriot Act of 2001, which allowed for the expansion of government surveillance with things like increased monitoring of communications, wiretapping, data accesses, and more. Again, this all largely marked his presidency and his legacy. But I did learn something neat about Bush while doing my research. He's a beautiful oil painter. Did you know that?
I feel like I've heard that. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that, but they're like really, really beautiful. He submitted his paintings to like books and art galleries, and I'm very impressed, and I really highly encourage people to check it out. The 44th president of the United States was Barack Obama, serving 2 terms from 2009 to 2017. Obama is America's first and only African-American president, and his election was huge. He flipped 9 states that had voted Republican in 2004, including major battleground states like Florida and Ohio. Prior to his presidency, he had a career as a civil rights attorney. He served as the Illinois state senator and then later as a U.S. senator from Illinois. As president, one of his greatest legacies was the establishment of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, which made healthcare more affordable, expanded Medicaid, and reformed insurance practices that previously denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. He also repealed the ban on LGBTQ plus people serving in the military, otherwise known as the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. It was under his administration that gay marriage became legal in the United States.
Which again, like time means nothing because it's crazy to think.
It was also during his administration that Osama bin Laden, the orchestrator behind the 9/11 attacks, was shot and killed in an operation that Obama oversaw. And then in a complete rejection of any growth and progress America had made in terms of equality, Donald Trump was elected as the 45th president of the United States, serving 1 term from 2017 to 2021. I say a rejection of the Obama administration because Trump, when he was elected in 2016, was a known racist and sexist. In particular, he used awful racist rhetoric around Mexicans, saying he was going to make Mexico pay to build a wall between the U.S. and Mexico so that they could keep their druggies and their rapists out. Those are quotes. Just 1 month before the election, the Washington Post released audio of Trump from 2005 when he was talking about how he treats women, saying, quote, "You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything," unquote. As president, he attempted to repeal the ACA, something he promised to do on the campaign trail, but was unable to secure legislative support. He still did make efforts to weaken the ACA. He expanded access to like short-term limited coverage plans that don't comply with ACA requirements. And he also cut funding to ACA enrollment assistance and marketing. He also did make efforts to build that wall that he had promised between Mexico and the United States. Sort of. He built under 500 miles of wall that was mostly just like repair work to the wall that was already there. And it was the U.S. that paid for this work, not Mexico.
Shocker.
Yeah. He did increase immigration enforcement efforts, however. He signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which reduced taxes for the majority of Americans, primarily the wealthy and corporations. During his term, he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and over 200 federal judges. This is a record for a single term. I think, when we're considering his legacies, like that has to be one of the top ones because affects everyone forever and ever and ever.
Well, and what's so interesting, I guess a lot of it comes down to timing, because I mean, Supreme Court justices are, they're appointed for life or whatever, right? So it's just so happens that 3 appointments opened up that under his presidency, it's one of those crazy things to just think like if things had just been a little different. I don't know.
It does come down to timing. You know how much I love Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is one thing that I've always kind of held against her, that she held out for so long.
She could have
and then died during his term. Yeah. Yep. If she had just retired, then Obama could have nominated someone to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
One of his lasting legacies, though, is that he is the only president in American history to be impeached twice. He was first impeached in 2019 after articles were brought against him for soliciting foreign interference from Russia to help him in his bid for re-election in 2020. These allegations also involved him withholding aid from Ukraine unless they were willing to conduct an investigation into Joe Biden, a political opponent of Trump's. The Senate did not meet a majority vote in the impeachment trial, however, and he served out the remainder of his term. He was impeached again in 2021, but we will talk about that in just a moment. In his last year as president, the world was hit with the coronavirus pandemic, which killed hundreds of thousands of people. Many criticized his approach to the pandemic as they perceived him to not be taking it very seriously. At one point, he even suggested injecting disinfectant into your blood to stop the spread of the disease. When a COVID vaccine became available, he was one of the first in line to receive it, though he was not particularly consistent in his encouragement of others to get the vaccine, due largely to the fact that much of his voter base was against a vaccine mandate. He did initiate Operation Warp Speed, which was an operation to accelerate the development and the distribution of COVID vaccines to those that wanted them. And I think that's a really, really remarkable thing. The COVID-19 pandemic was hardly the most earth-shattering thing to happen in 2020, though. In May of that year, a Black man named George Floyd was murdered by a police officer in Minneapolis, and this murder was captured on film. This resulted in mass Black Lives Matter protests across the world. Trump did express condolences for the Floyd family and said that his death should have never occurred. However, he referred to the protesters as thugs, said he would send the military in on American citizens if needed, and even tweeted just days into the demonstration, quote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts," unquote. As you can imagine, the 2020 election was extremely contentious as Trump campaigned for re-election. He did not win, though. Former President Obama's vice president, Joe Biden, won the 2020 election. But for months after the election was called in favor of Biden, Trump spread lies about the election being stolen from him. Then on January 6th, 2021, when the results of the election were being certified, officially naming Biden as the next president of the United States, Donald Trump incited an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. He told his supporters that they were going to have to, quote, "fight like hell," unquote, and they were going to have to walk down to the Capitol building, an adventure he said he would join along with them. Spoiler alert, he did not go with them. Thousands of Trump supporters swarmed the Capitol building, broke into it with the intent of causing harm to the lawmakers inside and stopping the certification. They replaced American flags with Trump flags. They injured nearly 200 law enforcement members and called for the public hanging of the vice president. People died that day, and yet Trump refused to call in the National Guard. It would be hours after the insurrectionists first breached the Capitol building that he released a video statement in which he empathized with the insurrectionists, told them he loved them, and asked them to go home. All of this led to Trump's second impeachment, for which he was once again acquitted. So as you can imagine, when Joe Biden became the 46th president of the United States, serving one term from 2021 to 2025, much of his time was spent combating misinformation, managing the COVID pandemic, and responding to social and racial justice issues. There aren't a ton of significant successes since so much of his presidency was spent on maintenance and trying to reestablish alliances. To summarize, though, it was during his administration that COVID-19 stimulus checks were issued to American citizens. That was nice.
That was nice. Yeah.
That was nice. Thank you. We officially withdrew troops from Afghanistan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson was nominated to the Supreme Court. Biden referred to himself as a transition candidate, implying that he would only serve one term. And as the oldest president in American history up to that point, that felt like a good idea. Let the old moderate guy with a career in politics serve as a bridge between the awful administration of the past and whatever hopefully brighter thing was to come in the future. But in April of 2023, he announced he would be seeking re-election. Then, only a few weeks after the presidential debate, in which he objectively did not perform well, he dropped out of the race and endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris, to run for the presidency just 4 months before Election Day.
Mm-hmm.
Simultaneous and in the background during all of this, Donald Trump was in and out of court. He was indicted on 34 federal counts of falsifying business records and was found liable of sexually abusing and defaming a woman. He was also tried for attempting to overturn the presidential election, racketeering in Georgia's election, and mishandling classified documents. And then that's the guy that the United States voted to become the 47th president of the United States.
Excellent decision-making skills we have.
It makes a lot of sense, does it not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In January of 2025, Donald Trump returned to the White House. And this is where the American presidential experiment ends. I actually do mean that. We no longer have a president. We have a fascist dictator. Since Trump regained the presidential office, he has made it a point to prosecute his political opponents, dismantle important government agencies and programs, withhold food stamps from children and child care funds from progressive-leaning states, protect pedophiles that he associated with. His Supreme Court has made it legal for his secret police to detain people based solely on the color of their skin. He's kidnapped a foreign president and announced we're going to take over that country. And we're only a year into this, and I've only...
You're skimming the surface.
I'm skimming the surface.
That was this week, so...
That was this week. I haven't even talked about how much the economy has tanked, how people can't afford groceries anymore, how his tariffs have destroyed the economy. And to be brutally honest, this was just like a bad week for me to be doing the research for this part of the episode, because just a few days before I wrote this part, just a few days before you and I are recording this episode, an innocent woman was shot in the face and killed by Trump's masked police in broad daylight. And then Trump and his administration spun it, called her a domestic terrorist, and justified her murder. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I'm just trying not to cry. Sorry.
So what a way to end this episode. But we knew that this was going to end this way.
That's why we should have gotten another drink.
I was going to say at the midway point, but really just at the latter 10-minute point.
Yeah, the last three presidents really, I think, what did it for us.
100%. So hopefully we're able to have another episode like this in the future where we talk about more future presidents, and it's not just an overview of the next 20 years under fascist dictators.
Fingers crossed.
Yep. To end on a maybe slightly happier note, these 2 episodes about the American presidents have inspired almost all of the topics we're going to be covering in the season ahead.
It seems like it. I'm excited.
Yeah, can you tell? Since you all know that the presidents in American history are my jam, I'm super excited about this season. Expect a lot of assassination talk, poor policy decisions, and political scandals ahead.
Love it. Hate it. Love it.
Yep. We hate it here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of #History.
All sources used to put together this episode can be found on our website at #history-pod.com.
A special thank you to my husband, Alex, for editing the podcast, particularly this one.
Yeah.
This episode is a doozy.
Good luck
You're the
to
best.
you, sir.
Yeah. I'm going to see him sitting in the corner just rolling his eyes. Subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. Share about us with your family and friends, and then give us a rate and review.
You want to know why I also appreciate him? Because I know he's putting us through like a the Alex filter.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which I really appreciate.
He's like, okay, you've now used the word fascist 12 times. Let's reel it back to 10. Yep.
Thank you, Alex. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at #history_podcast.
And come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. This is a place where you can support the podcast, and in exchange for your support, you'll receive an automatic 15% off all merchandise, and we mail you cards and stickers.
Yay! Stickers!
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.